Okay, so this is a life cycle of a grasshopper, or rather this is a model of showing the different stages in the life cycle of a grasshopper. You may see this around. Okay, so, you please do not misunderstand that there are 8 stages. No, there isn't any 8 stages. There's only 3 stages in the life cycle of a grasshopper that we have actually talked about: the egg, the young, and the adult. But what about all this? Well, the egg stage is over here, number 1. Okay, this is the egg stage. All right, and we have the young stage, steps 2, so-called steps 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are your young stages. Okay, also known as instars according to some books. Okay, this from steps 2 to step 6, this is the young stage. They cannot reproduce at this point of time. They molt and shed their hard outer covering as they grow longer, as they grow bigger. But at this point of time, this is considered to be one stage in science, the young stage. Whereas here we have model number 7 and 8. Very interestingly, if I'm not wrong, according to this, yeah, this is the female grasshopper and this is the male grasshopper. Let me double check again. Well, it seems that the male and the female, a male is smaller than the female. What about that? Very interesting. Hi, and welcome to the next episode of Science with Mr. N. Mr. Nazri here, and welcome back. We were taking a look at life cycle of insects. Okay, our dear friends, insects which come under the animal kingdom. Yep, the insects are one part of the animal kingdom. Insects have got, let's do a little bit of revision. 3 legs, no, 3 body parts, 6 legs. Yep, and some of them have wings, some of them may not, but all of them will have feelers and all of them will lay eggs. In the previous episode, we took a look at 3-stage life cycle. We took a look at the life cycle of the grasshopper, which I've just shown you in the model. And we have also taken a look at the dragonfly, okay, the life cycle of the dragonfly. Okay, for today, we are going to continue talking about 4-stage life cycle. Okay, without further ado, let me bring you back into the PowerPoint slide that I was talking about from before. Okay, now one of the least commonly discussed insect is the housefly. Okay, something that's normally overlooked, and it is not a very popular insect to talk about. It is not that colorful, and it spreads disease. Yeah, it feeds on decaying matter. It's near dead things and so on. Dead organic matter, may I say. So it is not a very common insect to actually discuss about, but I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it because when you reach primary 6, you are going to learn that there are certain groups of animals and even fungi, in fact, that actually feed on decaying matter. Okay, and they serve a very important purpose in the ecosystem. Without them, all these living dead things that we have around us, and I'm not just talking about the animals, I'm not just talking about the different animals that die off and their bodies are on the ground and so on. I'm also talking about dead parts of plants, leaves, dried leaves, and so on and so forth. If there has to be a system, a group of animals that actually consume this dead matter. They help to break down this dead matter into simple substances that will go back into the ground as nutrients for plants. And it is another cycle by itself. You're going to learn more about it not in primary 3, okay, but in primary 6, yeah, under the environment, okay, interactions within the environment. The housefly is one such creature. It actually feeds on decaying matter and it helps to break it down in some sense. But without going into further detail, let us take a look at the life cycle of a housefly. Okay, the housefly lays its eggs in rotting food. And may I actually add on, it is not just rotting food, it is also, it can also lay its eggs in rotting organic matter, dead organic matter. As long as it is organic, as long as it was once alive, the housefly can lay its eggs inside it, so that when actually the larva hatches, the larva can feed on the dead organic matter. The larva of the housefly is called the maggot. And over here, I just like to actually pause for a little bit and talk about the bolded green word over there, larva. Now, in a three-stage life cycle, the young of the adult is called the nymph. Okay, we have the cockroach nymph, we have got the grasshopper nymph, we may even have the dragonfly nymph. Okay, but for a 4-stage life cycle, a creature which has a 4-stage life cycle, the young in particular, this stage is not, it is not called a nymph, it is called a larva. Okay, it is called a larva, and may I add that the word larva is actually just the name of the stage. It does not necessarily, it is not necessarily a name for animals that we know, creatures that we know, such as the caterpillar and so on. It's just the name of a stage. However, certain creatures, larvae, will have their own popular names, will have their own names that we know them by. For example, caterpillars are the larva of the butterfly, whereas the maggot is the larva of the housefly. Okay, so when the maggot hatches, this is what it looks like. Okay, it will actually feed on the dead matter. Okay, and the maggot grows very fast. And when it gets too big for its skin, it grows a new outer covering and sheds the old one. This is something that we discussed before. This process is called molting. Okay, now the maggot molts a few times as it grows bigger. Okay, as we have discussed before, the hard outer covering does not grow. The hard outer covering is like a shirt which does not really stretch. So as the creature grows bigger and longer, it will need to remove its hard outer covering. Okay, that process is called molting. When it is time for the maggot to change into a pupa, it stops feeding and hides in the decaying matter. Very interesting. So the maggot, when it wants to become, when it's going to metamorphosize and change into an adult housefly, okay, it will hide in the decaying matter, form a cocoon around itself, and go through the metamorphosis stage, otherwise known as the pupa stage. Okay, the pupa may look still, but many things are taking place inside. Okay, it's actually quite a wondrous process, this metamorphosis. Okay, especially when we talk about silkworms later on, okay, which we're going to discuss in just a while. Okay, once the pupa has become an adult housefly, the adult housefly will come out from its cocoon, from its pupae, okay, and it may lay eggs on other rotting food, starting a new life cycle again. Okay, now you fly off, it will leave the eggs to hatch on their own. Yeah, the female will fly off and leave the eggs to hatch on their own. This is the housefly. Okay, but as I mentioned before, housefly is not a very popular insect to talk about, but it is important for the ecosystem. It has a purpose. Yeah, it does serve its purpose. Okay, now we are going to talk about another creature, and we are going to talk about mealworms. Mealworms is something that all of you have actually come into contact with. All of you are familiar with mealworms, and there are quite a number of you who have kept mealworms, yeah, and seen them grow and develop and change into the adult beetle and released it into the wild. Okay, mealworm is the name of the larva of the mealworm beetle. The actual name of the adult mealworm is called a mealworm beetle. Okay, the young is called mealworms. Just like later on, we're going to talk about the silkworm. The silkworm adult is called a silkworm moth. Silkworm moth. Okay, the young are called silkworms. Okay, so let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Mealworms. Okay, mealworms, they lay eggs. Okay, they lay eggs. They are oval shaped and they are very small. And sometimes it's in this picture, it is shown as a white, in white color. But sometimes the eggs can be of another color as well. Just like other animals, sometimes there are certain differences in the species of the mealworms. Yeah. So their eggs may be of a different color as well. It may be a bit darker. It may be a bit more yellowish. This one is white. Okay. Now, a mealworm beetle larva is called a mealworm. Okay. And if you remember your previous lesson, remember that particular experiment where you have the tray, the container, and then split into two sides. One is a brighter side and one is a darker side. Yep, and you found out it responded to the change in the environment by moving towards the secluded, the darker areas. I hope you guys can remember that. Okay, this tells you another habit. That experiment was meant to show that living things respond to changes. Okay, however, it also describes the habit of the mealworm larva, mealworms in general, that they prefer darker and more secluded areas. Okay. Once it will continue to eat. You will eat and eat and eat. It will become bigger and mold getting bigger and mold getting bigger and mold. But once it reaches a certain stage, a certain size, it will stop feeding and change into an adult beetle through the pupa stage. Okay, and this pupa stage is as shown over there. Okay, it is, the pupa is white in color. It is called a cocoon. Okay, a cocoon is the name of the casing of the larva that goes through the pupa stage. So don't be so overly stressed with all these terms and words that are used. They are just more accurate descriptions of certain processes that are in place. Yeah. Okay. So that is the pupa stage. And the name of the casing is called a cocoon. The mealworm develops into a pupa. While it does that, it doesn't eat, it doesn't move. But Mr. N, I learned that living things need food. How does the larva, the mealworm, get its food inside that stage? Well, it doesn't eat, but it has all the energy. It has all the energy that it needs after eating and eating and eating during the larva stage. Just like a caterpillar, yeah, it will eat and eat leaves, eat and eat and eat. It will get all the energy that it needs as it goes through metamorphosis. Okay. Now, when the case breaks open, the adult beetle appears, and usually it is darker in color. Okay. This is something that many of you who have kept the mealworms, you may have seen this happening, that the mealworm goes through a pupa stage and then metamorphosizes into a dark beetle, and you release it into the wild. Question, Mr. N, how come my mealworm doesn't change into a beetle? It doesn't form a pupa. Now, it doesn't become a beetle proper. It doesn't become an adult. There are many factors that actually affect the growth of creatures. Okay, just like you and I, we are affected by a lot of things. For example, if you have enough food, if you have enough nutritious food, you will actually grow healthily. However, if let's say you don't have enough food, or you are eating too much snacks, yep, you may not grow healthily. Okay, and you may lose weight, you may not grow as healthily as someone who has been eating right and eating well and eating enough. Okay, so this happens to other creatures as well. And when they are, and creatures are not just affected by food, they are affected by other things in the environment. You're going to learn this in primary 6 under factors that affect creatures in the environment. This is under interaction as well. So the mealworms that do not develop into beetles, they may be affected by not just food, they may be affected by the kind of food, they may be affected by the temperature in your home, they may be affected by quite a number of things. Okay, some things that you can help it with, and there are also other factors that you can't help. Okay, so my apologies for those who did not get to see their mealworms develop into a beetle. Okay, but you can source out for them, and you can get them on your own, and you can try it again. Okay, yeah. Of course, research is always important. You may want to find out a little bit more on how the mealworm can actually grow healthy, and sometimes they grow very well. Yep. Now, the cycle repeats itself when the female adult mealworm beetle lays its eggs. Okay, and the cycle will continue again. Now, we are going to go into one of the creatures that I kind of like, in a sense, the silkworm moth. Okay. Fun fact, years and years ago, West Grove Primary School did embark on this project Silk Road. It is a project named Project Silk Road, where students get to learn a little bit more about how do silkworms develop, yeah, and how does it actually produce silk and so on. Okay, and it is based on the P3 life cycle of the silkworm moth. Yeah. Okay, now silk, now you have learned in materials that that fabric is a group of materials. Yeah, there are many kinds of fabric. There's cotton, there's wool, there's polyester, and then there is such a thing called silk. Silk doesn't come from plants. Cotton comes from plants. Wool comes from the outer covering, the so-called fur of sheep. Yeah, but silk actually comes from this insect called the silkworm. Yes, it comes from an insect. Okay, but Mr. Nazri, why does the silk feel very soft and so on? That's the nature, that's the characteristic of the material itself. It's very cooling, yeah, and that's why people love to wear silk. But it can be pretty expensive depending on the kind of silkworm and depending on the kind of silk that is produced. Okay, now let's take a look at this particular picture. You will see a white color thing there with wings. That, my friends, is called the silkworm moth. Okay, the adult of the silkworm is called the silkworm moth. Excuse me. Okay, it is white in color. It looks pretty big, but it is actually no bigger than your hand. In fact, it is about the size of your finger and your thumb. Okay, and silkworms are not found in the wild. They are actually purposely reared by human beings for the silk. Okay, and the silkworm moth has a very short lifespan. Yeah, it is not, because of its size, it cannot really fly despite having wings. Yeah, and it has a very specific diet, so it doesn't survive well in the wild. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Taking a look at this picture, those yellow dots you see down there, those are not stools. Those are not poop. Those are eggs. Okay, the eggs are laid in small clusters on the leaves. Okay, and in this case, the eggs are yellowish. There are silkworm moths that actually have black color eggs and whitish ones, depending on the species, just like the mealworms. Yep. So over here you see the silkworm, the female silkworm moth lay its eggs on the leaf. Now, when the eggs hatch, this creature comes out. And this, my friends, that is the silkworm itself. Okay, it has a special diet and it only eats mulberry leaves. It's a very picky eater. Okay, and in order for it to grow well, in order for it to grow healthily, it only eats mulberry leaves. There are creatures, there are animals that are very picky eaters. Okay, and they don't just eat anything anyhow. Another creature that comes to mind is the panda. Okay, panda, regardless of what you know, is actually a bear. And it has teeth that, it is a carnivorous animal. By right, it eats meat. Okay, but because of its evolution, yeah, it not getting too far ahead of ourselves, the panda only eats bamboo shoots. Yep. Another one that is a bear that is supposed to be a carnivore, but it does not really eat meat is the koala bear. Okay, koala bears, if I am not mistaken, it only eats eucalyptus leaves. Okay, and putting all those carnivorous bears aside, koalas and pandas, the silkworm actually is a picky eater. It only eats mulberry leaves. Okay, and after it reaches a certain stage, a certain size, it will stop eating and slowly change into an adult silkworm moth in the cocoon. Now, this cocoon, this is your silk. This is your silk. Okay, if as you can see from the picture over here, there is this white color thread thingy. It is actually covering the silkworm on the inside. That is called a cocoon, and that is a silk around it. And that is how people actually get silk. Okay, by actually taking away the cocoon, yeah, and processing it to become silk fabric. Okay, I will mention this after this slideshow. I will share with you my visit to Korat, Thailand, with West Grove, with West Grovians way back in 2008. Okay, now when the cocoon breaks open, this cute creature comes out. The adult silkworm moth appears. That, my friends, is a silkworm moth. Okay, and it looks pretty cute. The orange color thingy that you see there, that is a finger. That is the tip of the finger. So you can imagine the size of the silkworm moth. Yep. It is not very big. It looks like a bit fat, I would say. The legs look muscular, but nowhere, you know, it does not pack muscle. Yeah, and it looks a bit cute in a way. Yeah, you can Google images of the silkworm moth. Just type in silkworm moth, and you can find better pictures that are out there. I will not be sharing them here today. Okay, and that is the life cycle of the silkworm moth. Okay, when the female adult will lay its eggs on the leaves and the cycle will repeat itself. Okay, now I would like to share with you my visit with West Grovians to Korat, Thailand. As I mentioned before, years back, there is this called Project Silk Road. Yeah, that West Grove started on and did for a fair number of years. Yeah, where we try to actually integrate other subjects into it as well, but without mentioning all that. Okay, so me and some other teachers and a number of West Grovians, we went to Thailand. We went to this area called Korat, where it is actually famous for a number of silk factories which produce silk. Yeah, and we went there to learn a little bit more about how do they get the silk. Okay, in this particular picture, you can see that those white color larvae, those are the silkworms themselves, and they are feeding on the mulberry leaves. Yeah, you can see the little black dots there. Those are not poop. Those are actually eggs. Yeah, those are actually eggs. Yeah. The silkworm will eat and eat and eat and eat and eat and eat, and they will grow bigger and bigger. Okay, now, and the leaves are mulberry leaves. They are grown as feed. They are meant to feed the silkworms. Nowadays, many factories producing silk, they may not necessarily use mulberry leaves, but they use a certain kind of a paste that's easier for them to prepare. The part of the ingredients are the mulberry leaves, but it is easier for them to make this so-called paste and feed it to the silkworms. It's easier to grow. Mulberry leaves require a certain condition for it to grow. Okay, you can't just grow mulberry leaves, under the block. For example, you can't do that. It needs a certain condition, it needs a certain environment. And in Thailand, the reason why is only why Korat is famous for it, famous for producing silk, is because of its location in the country. It has a certain climate and a certain weather that is special to grow mulberry leaves, and therefore allows Korat, the producers in Korat, to grow silkworms and produce silk fabric. Okay, so those are the mulberry leaves. Now, so what happens? How do they actually get the silk? And this is the icky part. Okay, so when the silkworm becomes, now I'm going to show this. I'm going to stop the share. I'm going to bring this out. Yep. Okay. And yeah, I've shown this to you before. Okay, these are flowers. Okay, these are flowers, but they are not actually flowers. They are flowers made from silkworm cocoons. Okay, I'm going to show this here. Okay, now, ladies and gentlemen, okay, these are the cocoons itself. Okay, now, let me just talk a little bit about how they get this and how does it relate to silk itself. Now, showing this as an example. Now, so what happens is this. The larva would become a pupa, right? Okay, when it reaches a certain stage, the larva would actually so-called produce silk. It will rotate and let the cocoon, or rather let the silk wrap around itself. Okay, the silk will become a little bit harder and it will form a cocoon covering the developing larva inside, the developing silkworm inside. Now, the producers of the factory, the so-called silkworm farmers that want to produce silk, they do not actually let the larva inside go through the whole metamorphosis stage. They do not allow the larva to develop fully. So what will happen is they will pick up the cocoon, the pupa, the cocoon, okay, and then remove the larva from inside, and then just take the cocoon itself. Yeah, and then the cocoon. Now, if you can see, there are little threads. They are, yeah, this, my friends, is silk thread. Okay, this is silk thread. Okay, so they actually pull it out. Yeah, and then the silk is one long thread. Okay, they will let it harden, and then they can actually they will process it, give it color, another color. As you can see, there are various colors over here. Okay, give it color, and then they will actually roll it up into silk silk fabric. Okay. Okay, so you can see that the silk thread has been pulled out. Okay, they are left to dry. Okay, and it can get pretty long. Yep, the silk from the cocoon is then dyed yellow. Okay, and then you can see this is a machine here. Okay, the thread is pulled and the silk is stretched. And over here, you can see right in the middle, there is a yellow bundle over here. This is the silk thread. Okay, roll up into bunches. Okay, the silk is actually stretched, but the stretching is not very much stretched to prevent the silk from tearing off. Okay, but it's just to make sure that the silk is actually smooth. Yeah, and this machine is called a weaving machine. Okay, as the silk fabric, the thread is stretched, it is then rolled. Right at the bottom, you can see I'm not sure whether you can see my cursor right there, okay? But you can see that the thread that is already smooth is rolled up into rolls. Yeah, okay. Now, touching a little bit about weaving. Weaving is the process of making the fabric itself. You and I, we wear cloth. We wear clothes, yes, and clothes are made from cloth, and there are various kinds of cloth, wool, silk, fabric lah. Okay, but all of them, they come from threads. Okay, so basically all these threads, okay, little single pieces of thread, they are actually weaved. They are actually weaved into fabric, into cloth. Okay, this process is called weaving, and this goes back years and years and years, ever since people learn how to make clothes for themselves, I guess. Yep. And there is a machine that is made. This machine is by hand. It's a manual machine where you can see as you pull, you compact all the silk threads together. Yeah, and it produces silk fabric. Okay, and this Wes Groven here is actually trying his hand at actually weaving the threads together, weaving a silk cloth. Okay, and that, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our discussion about the 4-stage life cycles of insects. Just a quick recap that the 4-stage life cycle usually, let me just end my share over here. Okay, a 4-stage life cycle, there are 4 stages, obviously: egg, larva, pupa, and adult. Okay, and some examples will include the housefly, some examples will include the silkworm moth, and some examples will include the butterfly. Okay, talking about butterflies, okay, this is another model of the butterfly. Okay, now the female, which one is the female one? The female one is the smaller one right over here. The adult one is a little bit on the bigger side over here. So yeah, different genders, different sizes a little bit, but it's not a big issue. Okay, but it doesn't have to necessarily be a problem. You can see that the larva is here. Okay, the eggs are here. Okay, the larva is here, the pupa is here, and this is the adult stage. This is available, and this is also available for, you can ask your teachers to get it from the science lab. Yeah, there's only one of this around. Okay, and but your teacher can actually show it to you in class. Yeah, as a class demonstration kind of a thing. Okay, that wraps it up for today's edition of Science with Mr. N. Okay, and I hope you guys have enjoyed my sharing with you for today. And please complete the worksheet that is available for you. And if there's any questions, yeah, you can ask your teachers. You can ask myself also. I'll be more than happy to share them with you. Okay, till then, take care and God bless.